Hey, welcome back to Pints and Perspectives, a podcast hosted by WellHouse Church, where we believe there is a plethora of theological perspectives and plenty of beer to go around.
Born on the bayou. Do it. Hey, welcome back to Pints and Perspectives. You're here with your boys, Adam and Cullen, and we're going to offer some pints and perspectives.
It do be that way sometimes.
That's all I got.
You've been slacking on your intros.
I know. Sorry. I gotta really work. You know, I'm putting in a lot of effort on another little YouTube project that's happening in the same studio. So
a little effort, my behind.
Poquito.
That's not true. You did do quite a bit of production work.
I put that work in
preparation for this last one. That is true. You did.
Yeah, and when it comes to Pints and Perspectives, I kind of just fly by the seat of my pants, you might say. So, because this is your show, not mine.
No, you're the co-host. You get ownership in this show too. Look at this guy, always trying to get a loop, get a way out, get a way out.
Hey, comment below. How is Cullen's editing?
Hey, it has improved. If you're listening to the RSS only feed,
you're missing out.
I would encourage you to come over to the YouTube side.
Get to the YouTube now.
And I am this computer that you see. If you're on YouTube right now, this computer that you see is antique. I have to treat this like an angel.
Look, real talk. That is an antique at this point.
This computer is 10 years old. And it's been doing high-powered editing 4K footage.
Tell them.
Almost 3 years.
Preach.
It's time for her to be retired.
Oh, send her to put her out to pasture. It's
time to put her out to pasture. She needs to live out her days just surfing the web, putting on YouTube videos for my children. She just needs her moment.
Yeah, that's good.
Please donate.
This is a pitch.
Let me buy another computer, please. And if you do,
the content gets better.
Yeah, that's the whole premise of the pitch. Is I am capable of editing in much better softwares and producing much better content. But she, sweet baby Alice here, cannot handle the better editing softwares and 4K footage. She was not built with 4K footage in mind. It takes everything out of her to deal with the 4K.
She's just from a different generation, and you can't, teach an old dog new tricks. This dog just don't hunt.
She do hunt. She do hunt. Her hunting days are just numbered at this point.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So yes, please, if you would like, donate. We are making this podcast better. The editing is better. It's only going to improve.
And I just keep getting funnier and more handsome. So come back for that content
until you start slacking.
And
don't have great intros.
I look full circle. That was a great intro, wasn't it? Welcome back to Pints and Perspectives. We're gonna drink some beer as we do, and I'm going to be drinking the Karbach Brewing, Houston, local Houston brewery. It's owned by a much larger company now, famously. But this is their Cerveza Especial Mexican style lager. And when I saw it in the fridge, when Cullen pulled things out, I was like, "What is this?" And I think what I said was Karbach doing too much. It very much looks like a Modelo. They're clearly going after the Mexican style lager.
Oh yeah, it's definitely, they're trying to, it's a Modelo copycat.
Let's see. Mexican style lager. This Mexican style lager is refreshingly crisp with delicate sweetness. It's the beer you want in your hand to celebrate all of life's moments, no matter where you are. Enjoy Karbach Cerveza Especial at dinner with La Familia, watching the game, or just to cap off another day well lived. Malts, 2-row pale, Vienna and corn, hops, Tinenang. Did I say that right? Tintanang. 10 IBUs, 4.5% alcohol by volume. Recommended pairings, carne asada, birria, carnitas, familia y amigos.
Damn, that's making me hungry.
Cerveza Especial. Okay, look, so I have a little bit of a confession to make. This is a good time. This is a good segue. I didn't buy the beer this time. Cullen did. He didn't know I was going to say this, but I had a beer revelation this past weekend. A beer revelation.
What does that mean?
Okay. So like most beer drinkers have kind of their like daily drinker, or like you have
Your label.
your label.
Yeah.
Or you have like different beers you drink at different settings.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Right. Like
Or seasons.
or seasons
Yeah.
or right. Exactly. So I came to the conclusion this weekend, I did a ton of like outdoor, like gardening and manual labor in this part of my house, like all week, all day Saturday.
What's
all day
your
Sunday.
what's your it's I need a beer just because it's hot outside and I'm
I'm
working in the yard.
I'm working in the yard and it's
Yeah,
hot
what's your
outside.
label?
Okay, so I realized that my label is Modelo Especial.
It's great. It's fresh. It's crisp.
It's so good. And so
Yeah.
I also love a Miller Lite. Don't get me wrong. I
Hey.
love a Miller Lite, and I love Coors Light for the same purpose.
You know, I grew up drinking Keystone Light and Natural Light.
Yeah, that natty.
You know, I drink just about anything when it's hot outside.
Well, okay, so we had like my block. I live on this block, and they do a crawfish boil every year. And so the keg was Modelo Especial.
It was Modelo, and it's great. Yeah.
It was perfect, and I'm realizing that like all of my neighbors, all their label is Modelo, and and so anyways,
It's a great label.
So I say all that to say that recently, like within this past week, I have consumed a lot of Modelo Especial.
Gang, gang.
So I'm looking forward to the comparison.
Hey,
I'm
that's great.
assuming. Anyways, go ahead. Well, yeah. What are you drinking?
Great segue here. I'm drinking the St. Arnold Hideaway.
Sanies.
It's a margarita inspired beer. And you were talking about the crawfish boil. What did I tell you my favorite beer to drink at a crawfish boil is?
Oh, I don't remember. I don't. I'm sorry. I don't remember.
Anything that's like salt and lime. So
Yeah,
like
okay.
my go-to is usually the Taco Tuesday,
Okay.
which the Taco Tuesday is a margarita in style. It's
From
like
Karbach,
a sea salt
right?
and lime. No, from 11 Below.
11 Below.
Another Houston brewery.
Yeah, 11 below. Right.
And I don't remember which one came out with theirs first. I think 11 Below came out with the Taco Tuesday first.
Well, so there's other. So my favorite citrus inspired, margarita inspired beer is actually from Dogfish Head.
Oh.
And it's called Salty something.
Oh, I've not had that
It's
one.
made with black lime
Oh.
and sea salt because
Ooh.
they're like from Boston, or they're like from the Northeast.
Yeah,
so it's
yeah.
a little bit of a different take. I think I have one in the fridge. I'll try to get it out. Anyway,
Yeah.
sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
No, that sounds great. Yeah, that sounds so good.
It's different. It has
I go-
coriander in it as well.
Yeah, which, if you didn't know, we also call that cilantro.
Right. That's great.
This guy. So, anyways, I have this. It seems like St. Arnold is advertising it as a pretty balanced beer, little lower on the hop side, only 15 IBUs, 5% ABV.
You're just going to taste a bunch of lime.
I would imagine so. What they say is Hideaway is a dressed beer all in one delightful package that will help you hide away no matter where you are. This refreshing beer combines salt, lime, and a touch of tang to provide a crisp, bright flavor with an orange and citrus character derived from El Dorado hops.
And just like a margarita.
Just
Fascinating.
like a margarita. So,
I've never had that. I would like to try a sip. Okay.
cheers,
Cheers.
buddy. I've never had it either, obviously. I may have had it once, but if I did, I can't remember. And my another sea salt and lime style beer that I like to get is the Shiner sea salt and lime.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan.
If you're just looking for a beer that's a little more salty, like if you're working in the yard and you don't want to drink something like a Modelo lime. I mean, not a Modelo, a Michelob Ultra, Cactus Lime or whatever it is.
That's my brother-in-law's label. He drinks a lot of them.
Oh, I have drank a lot of
When
them.
I'm at his house, I drink them. When we did your birthday party, one of your family members was drinking them, I think.
Yeah, Brett.
Yeah, Brett. Okay, this beer is a Mexican style lager. Like it is. My least favorite Mexican style lager is a Corona. Sorry to all the Corona lovers out there. I love a Pacifico.
Corona Light or Corona Premium?
I am a fan of neither.
Okay.
And I can't tell you exactly why, but I love Pacifico, and Modelo is my favorite. This is not meeting the Modelo standard for me. It is a little bit less crisp, and I am moderately pleased. And I don't have much to say about the flavor profile because there's nothing going on.
Okay. Interesting.
I would love to drink this while doing yard work. How's that margarita? It's very unfiltered.
So I was going to say, it has a weird haze to it. That's probably from the lime adjunct.
Oh, yeah.
There's just no way to get all that citrus out in that way. And they're probably not juicing limes and then just putting the husks in.
The salt, would the salt contribute to it as well? I mean,
depends on when you did it. If you added it to the boil, no.
Good point.
Because it would just dissolve into the wort. And then any sediment, like anything that was left, will go to the sedimentary at the bottom. Well, I guess for them, in the filter at the bottom of the conical fermenter. But it's real flat.
Okay, let me try.
Okay, look, this is a great example. Look at
It
these two beers.
flat. It's flat.
It tastes flat. It has very little carbonation. I mean, it's kind of hazy, so you can't see what little it does have. It's hard to see.
I see bubbles, but you make a good point.
I mean, look at how much more yours is carbonate. I mean, yours is maintaining bubbles on the top of the glass, and mine, taste it.
Yeah. Ooh, as billed, though, the lime is...
It's popping. I agree. That does not meet the standard of a Modelo.
It does
that
not.
tastes much more like a Pacifico and a worse version of it.
Yeah, it's not great. I don't think it's... I wouldn't... Don't try to steal... is this cultural appropriation? Where's Sam when we need her?
For a white company, a mega mass, publicly traded
European-owned
brewing company
to do a Mexican-style lager in Texas, get out, because that's already been done, and it's been done way better.
Yeah.
Modelo is brewed in Mexico.
Well, but you also understand. Oh no, that's Dos Equis. Dos Equis.
I like a Dos Equis too.
Well, it's a Mexican-style lager brewed in Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
But by a German.
Oh, really?
And it has a German brewing flair to it.
That makes sense. But the beer
I think that's Dos Equis.
could be. I don't know. Anyways, my rating. Do you want to say more about this?
No, I was gonna rate it.
Well, let me ask one question to you about this beer. The way they market it is margarita inspired. Do you get any margarita vibes? I mean, lime, of course.
I mean, if salt and lime is the standard, but I mean, for me, a great margarita has
sweetness,
orange curacao, and it has orange hints, which I mean, I get a little bit.
Yeah,
but that's the orange curacao, right? And
yeah.
I think the other thing is agave. Blue agave from the tequila, or
right.
and for me, I like to, in my margarita, I like to use agave syrup or nectar instead of simple syrup,
right?
Or sugar, and there's no agave in this.
Sure,
some agave adjuncts, some smoked agave adjunct at the end. This would have been far superior had they done something like that. It's not creative. It's a Mexican Pilsner malt with salt and lime.
Sure.
And lime juice.
Which there's a market for. Look, there's a market for.
And the lime juice, I can tell because of how
you feel it?
Yeah, lime juice is kind of delicate. they did not put in the boil.
Mm.
It's added like after the wort. Maybe they put some lime husks in the boil, but this is real vibrant, and lime's pretty delicate.
I mean, I like the lime flavor.
I think they put it at the end. Well, that's what I'm saying. It's too pronounced to have.
Yeah.
It's too pronounced to have been boiled predominantly. I think it was an adjunct. The salt is the addition in the boil. It's just plain. 5.4.
Ooh. Yeah, I'm going to give this a 5.
Terrible. St. Arnold, I'm sorry. I do love you.
Karbach, I'm not sorry. I like some of your beers.
Hey, shout out. The Hopadillo, that's a beer.
The Rodeo Clown.
The Rodeo Clown, that's another beer.
That's a beer.
We appreciate the beers.
The beers.
But we don't like it when you produce stuff like that.
No doo-doo, just beer.
Oh, yeah. In fact, I would give that beer like probably like a 5.1. Like it's real low.
You know.
All right.
It's an easy sipper, that's for sure. Crushable.
Hey. So, talking about crushable beers, I was thinking about Ben Chambers and his concept of crushable the other day because I bought, I went to the store and bought the Buffalo Bayou Crush City IPA.
Oh, yeah.
It is...
That beer is not crushable.
That beer is not crushable.
It is thick.
It is thick. It's got high IBUs.
Yeah. Opposite
that
of
bitterness coats your mouth. Yeah, that's a beer.
Opposite of crushable.
Yeah, that's a beer. Okay.
All right, what are we talking about?
We're going to talk about sexuality.
Gross. Sorry, that was just a purity culture trigger.
I was like, is it gross? I kind of find it great. I find it kind of great.
Well, True Love Waits really did a number on me.
Yo, facts. Facts. So I don't know how many episodes this is going to be. We have our friend Ben Blackwell coming on in about a month to do a couple of episodes with us. We're going to find out if I'm a heretic from a PhD in theology that used to be both of our mentors.
We're looking forward to this.
It would be great. And we're getting a third microphone.
Hey.
Shout out.
Applause.
Yes, it will be great. So I don't really know how I want to structure this. I wanted to intro into this idea of sexuality. I grew up in purity culture. You grew up in purity culture. I was not a virgin when I got married. Were you a virgin when you got married?
No.
Yeah. So I don't know why I asked you that. I knew that.
I appreciate you not assuming things. I appreciate you giving me voice.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know why I asked you that.
Also, what if I was like, I'd prefer not to say?
I'd have let you.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe that's what we should say is the Bible knows no concept of like sexuality being a boundary.
What do you, what? So,
well, maybe, yeah.
I don't know what you mean.
I guess what I'm trying to say, and the ancient world sexuality doesn't think about sexuality the way that a modern Western person does.
Sure.
And I mean, maybe the best way I could say this is, the Bible definitely talks about sex.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where purity culture gets its root, right? I mean, it's still some of that from the Bible.
I think it gets it from a power dynamic and a love of oppression. But anyways.
Well, I think that's why it kind of came to fruition.
Yeah.
And because it was to quote unquote protect young girls, moms got on board. Probably because they knew they were the victims of the abuse previously, and this was a way to protect them.
There's a great book about this. Anyway, sorry, go ahead. Maybe we'll do that. Maybe we'll do a purity culture episode.
I told you I thought we should do a purity culture episode.
That's right.
So I definitely think there's a lot of the way, I definitely think purity culture has impacted this conversation in a multitude of ways. But I also think just like modernity and the concept of germs and learning about
science.
Yeah. Scientific development has changed the way we view sexuality and STDs. And
well, the Bible still thinks pregnancy is based on God's decision making. I mean, and I guess
it gives
people still think that, but
credence to God as the author of life,
like blessing or cursing, right? And rather than like sperm enters egg.
Well, that's not true.
And
that's not true, because there's the whole thing in Genesis. I think it's 29, where the second brother that marries Tamar, he has sex with her and lets his seed fall on the ground so that he does not have a child.
Yeah, okay.
So they do have concept. They know that sperm fertilizes that egg.
Well, they didn't know about fertilization. They knew that if he ejaculated in her...
How do you think they breed cattle? How do you think they breed livestock? Yes, they do.
What I'm saying is they knew that the junk coming out of the man's penis made the lady pregnant.
Well, yeah, that's yeah.
It made baby in lady. Like but they didn't have microscopes to understand fertilization.
I was wrong. Genesis 38, 29.
I'm so disappointed. Let's revoke one of those many degrees you hold.
I can't remember all the verse, all the things.
You don't have the Bible memorized?
No.
That's because you had sex before marriage.
Probably so. It probably ruined me. I'm probably despised by God in some way.
You're like a bruised rose that's been passed around from person to person, and all value has been destroyed.
Just stripped. I'm just a wilted
and your
flower.
Only hope is some measure of mental
divine
assent.
Intervention to come in re-strike my posture.
And hopefully the benevolence of a very handsome young white man
to come and save me.
Yes, to put a ring on it, as they say.
Yes. Look, the ancient world's concept of sexuality is all over the place. Look, so I really do try to keep, both ends of the spectrum as far as voices go in my life. This is a book by Zondervan, which traditionally is a pretty conservative publishing house. I mean, they're an academic, or this is not even Zondervan academic. This is just
pretty
Zondervan.
popular. It looks pretty popular with that cover
Yeah, that's
art.
so true. So this is going to be more popular stuff, but it's written by a doctor from, he's got a doctorate in philosophy, a DPhil.
Oh, is it UK?
Instead of a PhD from Oxford.
Yeah, okay.
So, I mean, he's conservative, but he's not super conservative.
Where does he teach now, currently? I mean, is he hold a professorship? Maybe not. Somebody's
Old
paying.
Testament, professor of Old Testament at Biblical Theological Seminary in Philadelphia. Not going to be very conservative. But Zondervan traditionally is a pretty conservative publishing house.
Yeah.
And so I got this guy coming and talking about it in the Old Testament. And he makes a great point that majority of it, like he has a whole chapter in here, he has a whole chapter in here about homosexuality. And the whole thing is like, I really don't want to talk about it. Not because it's like the buzzword thing, not because it's like the hot topic and I don't want to push any buttons, but because this is a book about Old Testament love.
Yeah.
And the Old Testament, by golly, is just not really that concerned with homosexuality.
Yeah.
There's a grand total of like 2 verses and 1 story in the entire Old Testament about homosexuality. 10,000 unique words. I mean, like 30,000 or 10,000 unique words, 60 or 40 something chapters, and 3 references to homosexuality or a story about homosexuality. And you got another reference in Ezekiel 16 tells you that Sodom and Gomorrah and the sins of Sodom and Gomorrah are not homosexuality.
Nope. Hospitality.
It's lack of hospitality to the foreigner.
Jesus tells us that.
It's lack of being kind. It's lack of being hospitable. It's lack of opening your doors. It's lack of acknowledging the need in another human and exploiting that human for your own personal gain.
Sounds like what we're doing to queer people today.
Oh, it's a lot. Yeah, it's a lot similar. So, I mean, and then I've got this book, which this woman, I almost studied under her and did my PhD under her. Her name's April DeConnick. She's a religion professor at Rice University. You might adjacently put her in the Christian tradition, but if I had to put her in a box, she's probably a Unitarian Universalist.
Me too. Go off, Queen.
And this book is great. I mean, her number one chapter out of the gate is what happened to Mother God?
Nice.
Like what happened to the femininity of God, and why did we replace it with a gender neutral spirit?
Because the men in power are intimidated by femininity.
That's part of her. That's part of it. That is part of it. And look, when you start reading this kind of stuff, and this is about like the early church.
Yeah.
Right. This is about gender conflicts in the early church. I mean, it's not a new conversation. There used to be ancient world propaganda written all over ancient Rome, and it said Julius Caesar sleeps with women for pleasure and men for power.
Scandalous.
These things are not new concepts.
Yeah.
I mean, at the risk of being the Bible guy, which I already am, Ecclesiastes has said there's nothing new under the sun.
Yeah.
Just new ways to repeat the same pattern.
Well, it also, good point. Also, homosexuality is not a new thing. It's not some cultural revolution.
When it's not unique to humanity.
Right.
There are other mammals that, for whatever reason, sometimes pleasure, sometimes other reasons that we can't really explain, have homosexual behavior.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So
even in mammals, dudes F dudes. It's just part of it. I don't look it up. Look.
You're so eloquent. No, it's good. It's good. Well, but that's the point, right? It's like, no, there's nothing new under the sun. Humanity has always been there have always been transgender individuals in humanity. There has always been gay individuals in humanity. There have always been queer individuals. There's always been asexual individuals. There's like, these are not new human categories of the 21st century that have been created for the liberal takeover for the socialist agenda.
Over 450 species of animals worldwide have been documented with homosexual behavior.
Yeah.
And
it's not unnatural.
Pair bonding.
Yeah.
Compromising courtship and sexual pair bonding with a same gendered partner.
Yeah. It's real. It exists. Stop oppressing people. Sexuality in the Bible.
Yeah. So, but I also think that no matter where you're at on this conversation of sexuality and Christianity or theology or the Bible, whatever construct you want to put it in, everybody agrees that this is something sacred. And I think that comes from Genesis 2, Genesis 1, the very beginning, the Imago Dei, that they were created, male and female, and the first thing they were told was to procreate and fill the earth. And you know what? I'm sorry. If God didn't want it to feel good, God wouldn't have made it feel good.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm just saying.
That's a good point too, because in that little Edenic story there, God does actively make some things feel bad. Work and childbirth, he could be like, and also sex bad. Sex is bad, and now you're going to suffer while you have sex too. But
God,
that's not what happened.
Sex, because for whatever reason, that whoever wrote and edited that, whatever, the Jewish tradition that kept that collection of Genesis 1 through 11, and more specifically Genesis 1 through 3, sex was like a linchpin or a kingpin for what it meant to exhibit divinity.
Wow.
It's a interconnectedness between two entities that's undescribable.
Yeah.
It's a give and take, a thing of pleasure and comfort and vulnerability
And creation.
It's the epitome of, life bringing,
Right.
which is a divine quality.
Sure.
Our sexuality is uniquely divine. As far as it goes, with us being image-bearing humans, our sexuality is divine. Now, there's also some limits to it, right?
Yeah,
and
that's
this is
right.
where we come up with purity culture and the homosexuality issues and some of those things. But remember how I was talking about homosexuality being like only mentioned like 3 times in the Old Testament.
Yes.
Entirely. Jesus never talks about it.
The Bible is not concerned with the topic.
It's just really not.
Yeah.
And certainly not in the way that we're talking about it.
Definitely.
But you know what it is concerned about?
Ooh, what? Hatred and oppression and violence?
Well, yeah, but I meant more so just as
sexuality.
it pertained to
Sexuality. Don't beat your wife. I don't know what. Loyalty?
Don't cheat. So like marriage really matters.
Yeah.
There's a ton in the Old Testament about don't be an adulterer. And you know, we can say all we want that the Bible says in Leviticus 18 that it's an abomination for a man to lie with a man as he does with a woman. But you know what else? Proverbs says that the 7 deadly sins are an abomination. And that's gluttony. I know all y'all fools out here overeating on Thanksgiving. So I'm just saying we need to be careful how we approach these things. Because what Leviticus 18 really seems to be concerned with, rape,
that's
adultery, incest, cheating, harm. It's not concerned with premarital sex.
Well, it's not concerned with consensual, loving, meaningful, mutually beneficial, pleasurable giving and taking of 2 parties who are choosing to do it and enjoy it together. That is not what the Bible's concerned about.
But the Bible is concerned about that happening and a woman getting pregnant and the man not doing his responsibility to care for them.
Well said.
And so it really commissions marriage.
Yeah.
It really pushes forward marriage. And Jesus seems real concerned with not breaking marriage. That's why when those religious folk come to him and they say, hey, Moses says we can get a divorce, whatever. And Jesus says, well, that's just, Moses just permitted you to do that because of your own stubbornness, not because that's God's design.
Do you think, I may be running ahead of us here in this series, but do you think that Jesus took a stand for marriage because it was the right holy thing to do, or was he defending the institution of marriage at that time as it was conceived in an effort to protect the vulnerable populations that were in those contractual obligations? What I mean is, do you think he was more so advocating for marriages to stay together for the sake of the woman and the child?
Read this book. If you want a great answer, she has an entire section on here of what did Jesus think about marriage. And
did I just get it? Did I just hit the nail on the head?
Pretty close.
Wow, that's great. Because growing...
Jesus, throughout his entire teaching, Jesus is an advocate for women. Jesus lets women sit at places they are not welcome. Jesus lets people be present for conversations they should not hear. Jesus makes space for women to lead in places they are not looked at as leaders.
Yeah, that's good. Yep.
Jesus is the ultimate advocate for women. And so, yes, I have no doubt that Jesus wanted to protect marriage because you got these Jewish men out here divorcing women for burning their toast.
Yeah, and
they're matzah bread.
And then she has to become a sex worker at that point.
Yeah, at that point, there's very few things she can do. I mean, if she's early enough, if it happens shortly after she's had a kid,
she get remarried.
She can be a wet nurse.
Yeah. Oh, dang.
But really, her value is what her body can provide.
Commodification of a human being.
Yeah. I mean, women and children are property in the ancient world. Yeah. Nobody is thinking about this the way that we are. Right. And so, you know what? Maybe we should try to have my friend Jake come on this. There's a whole thing there's a whole group of study about sex and sexuality and the way that sexual abundance, which at some point we're going to talk about this word porneia. It's a Greek word that can be translated as fornication or sexual excess or,
immorality.
Yeah, all kinds of weird things. We'll talk about that at some point. But there's a study about the way that sex and the sexual experiences that you have impact your brain. And what they found is that the overindulgence of sexual experiences, it's you get tamed to it, right? Like anything, right? If you overindulge in something, your body, acclimates.
Everything
adjusts.
in moderation.
Yeah. So Hugh Hefner.
Okay.
By the time he was near the end of his career and dying, in order for him to have an orgasm, he would have to have 3 of the Playboy girls.
Whoa, graphic content warning.
Having sex with each other on the bed next to him while he was watching porn on the TV and masturbating by himself. That was the only way he could ejaculate.
Jeez.
And so the Bible does seem to be very concerned with sexual excess as well, like all things in moderation. Now, I don't think that means that the extreme is you can only have sex with your wife or your spouse.
Whoa.
But I do think that the Bible is warning people away from like 5 nights a week going to an orgy.
That would be excess.
Yeah, like the overindulgence, the sexual excess really is a problem, as well as the exploitation and objectification. At some point on here, we're going to talk about Jesus and his teachings on lust, which are ironically uniquely tied to adultery.
Yeah, that's true.
It's more about the fidelity concept. It's more about the trust. It's more about protecting people's vulnerability in the sexual experiences and states, not protecting them from sexual experiences.
Ooh, preach. That's good. Yeah, I mean, it's about harm and exploitation and oppression and non-consent, non-enthusiastic consent. Those are that is the problem. Those are the problems.
Yeah,
those are the bad parts. Those are the parts we have to work on.
The Bible is concerned about protecting those who cannot protect themselves.
Yeah,
and when it comes to sex specifically, unfortunately, that's women. Men are traditionally larger than women, just in the way that biologically heterosex works. Men have the position of power.
Yeah.
And so by all of those things, it puts women in the place of harm. And the Bible is concerned about protecting the vulnerable, protecting those that cannot necessarily protect themselves. I mean, think back to the law, right? If you own a field and you plant crops in it, can you harvest that whole field?
I mean, you can try, but you have to leave some.
The Bible says you cannot. Levitical law says you cannot. Levitical law says you must leave the edges of your field to be
gleaned.
To be gleaned for those that do not own fields and cannot afford grain. So no, by and large, and that, that's what David Lamb argues in his book at the end, the last chapter on homosexuality. He's like, look, I don't want to have this conversation because the Bible's not concerned with this conversation. The Bible, the Old Testament specifically, is really not concerned with this conversation. What it's concerned with is the 141 times it mentions the lack of justice.
Yeah, there you go.
What it's concerned with is the 100 and something times that the lack of hospitality to the foreigner is mentioned.
Yeah.
What it's concerned with is not who one person wants to. What it's concerned with is that consensual and is there harm?
Right.
Or are people being protected as the individual that is valued doing the thing that is closest to divinity?
Yeah. I mean, sexual ethics, purity culture, especially, but like evangelical sexual ethics, I mean, which predominate Western society, I think, well, at least in the South where we live, our context. I mean, it is really about controlling the bodies of women, and children for that matter, and a lot of that is rooted in this power dynamic that men hold over the bodies of women.
Well, isn't it interesting that that's where you go? And I think Jesus would agree with you. That's the unfortunate situation.
It's still commodification of human bodies.
And so when Jesus says, "Hey, don't do that," I tell you that anyone who even looks at a woman lustfully has already committed adultery with her in his heart. What does he say? Gouge your eye out.
Right. Pluck it out.
The responsibility is on the man.
Right.
Purity culture put that on women and said, you must cover yourself. You must dress a certain way. You must do this thing as not to tempt me.
Right.
That's the power dynamic.
Right.
It's
even the abortion situation too, right? Like the fact that someone can make a legal argument that a woman does not have full autonomy over her body, even though there is another life in that body still, like the when life begins and how that's handled and yada, yada, yada. I mean, we could have a whole conversation about abortion, right? But my point is, when you legislate what a human being can and cannot do, is and is not allowed to do with their own sexual organs, that's a problem. It's problematic. It's problematic.
Well, I'm not. Yeah, it is problematic. No, I do think it's partly necessary, right? Like I want pedophilia to be illegal.
Yeah, I mean,
don't want vulnerable people being harmed because of someone else's sexual impulse.
Right, and I guess
a child cannot consent. I do not care what anyone says. A child cannot consent.
100%.
I mean, in the ancient world, if you were a girl, you could be married off as early as 3 years old. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
You damn near had to be married by 14.
That's because, again, you
were a commodity. You are property. You are valuable.
Right. And somebody else gets to make the decision on how to use your body sexually.
Yeah. And we don't live in that kind of world anymore.
There's also really great arguments that the abortion laws of the United States are actually that is really rooted in American slavery.
Keeping women down.
Well, the white master has always had control of the reproductive systems of women, and slaves were commodities, slave babies were commodities, and slave owners dictated and had policy and law around what females could and could not do with their bodies in their pregnancy. And a lot of that same control still exists today, but at a much larger scale. And so it's problematic at many levels. And the Bible, unfortunately, I think doesn't give us a whole lot of solutions to some of these questions.
Well, but look, here's the thing. We have to remember the Bible's not having these conversations.
Right.
The Bible doesn't know how to have these conversations because you know what? If Paul could have dreamed of the internet, maybe he'd have told us about pornography.
Right.
But he didn't because he didn't know it was possible.
Right.
Paul is writing apocalyptic letters thinking that the entire world's going to end in his lifetime. Yeah. Paul's not thinking that technology and advancement and all this shit that we now have is even possible. We got to stop holding the Bible to that premise that it has all of the answers when it's written by people that didn't even know these things could be possible.
But isn't it interesting that the majority of the policies around sexuality and sexual identity and sexual practice in this country, at least, a lot of the policies are debated on biblical grounds. The majority of conservative policy is rooted in a biblical reading.
Look,
not that I agree with it, but that's where it's coming from.
If you want to use a rudimentary hermeneutic and commit hermeneutical gymnastics and proof text a few things and sprinkle some Jesus dust on it and spout your political views, that's fine.
Sounds like Sunday mornings in America.
But don't say it's based on a biblical understanding because you hadn't read shit about the Bible.
Well, but they have. That's not true.
No, they did not.
That's not true.
They read enough to craft and manipulate doctrine around what they wanted. But they did not take the text for what it was. They did not take the author's intent. Yeah. They did not understand the cultural understanding and what they were really trying to do. They took letter of the law and said, oh yeah, that must mean spirit of the law.
Literal.
That's stupid.
Yeah.
That's dumb. We don't translate any other language that way. We don't translate any other document that way. If you go and you listen to a translator translate something in another language, are they going to go word for word translation? No, because it's stupid if you do that. It doesn't make sense. What they do is they do spirit translation. They translate what the intent of the communication is and try to do that best they can word for word. But stuff's always left out.
Sure.
Because our goal is not to communicate word for word. In the ancient world, that's certainly not the case. Ancient world writers had liberty that we don't have as journalists and all of these other kind of information age protections around information and media. The ancient world doesn't have those. They had creative license and all of these other things that are lost on us in conservative evangelicalism here in America.
Yeah, modernity really messed us up.
Really messed us up, man. Sorry for my rant.
Yeah, tell us how you really feel.
Well,
intensity.
Look, I personally believe that the oppression of LGBTQ plus individuals in the American church, I think in 200 years, we'll be looking back, asking ourselves, what the f*** did we do that for? Because it's the same argument for slavery. People are using one-off verses to sprinkle some Jesus dust from the Bible in order to say that we should own slaves. But in 200 years, we're going to go, oh, man, yeah, we really got that wrong.
I 100% agree that should be what their response will be. But there are plenty of Southern Baptist Convention leaders who still probably wouldn't mind a slave or two.
That's probably true.
And probably still read the Bible that way.
But look, here's the thing we know. And you know, throughout our life and the lives of our parents, Southern Baptist was king. Southern Baptist was king.
Yeah.
By the time our children die, Southern Baptist will not be king.
Yeah, they're already.
They are going downhill fast. They got so much infighting amongst them about women and pulpits and Beth Moore and Saddleback Church and Rick Warren and all this stuff going on.
And a list of 20,000 pastors who are abusing
women and stealing and doing all kinds of things. No, look, their time has come and gone. They're not going to be king anymore. It's time for the Pentecostals to have their run. That's who's coming up. And there will be downfalls and pitfalls from that, right? They got just as many kooks and narcissists in their pulpits as we did in the Baptist world.
They're leading Christian nationalism.
Well, it's true, but they're on the rise. They're the fastest growing denomination in the world.
Yeah. Yep.
They will have their run. And we'll see what happens. Unfortunately, they're not affirming for LGBTQ people either.
Not at all, but they do like women more. So
they do like women, so it's progress.
Yeah.
And that's why they're going to overtake the Southern Baptists, because it's just progressive. It's progressive enough to take one step away. You got to deal with a little bit of crazy.
See, this is the thing. Conservatism never, like, it is the opposite of progressing. So, like, but
it's true. You conservatively stay where you are.
But nothing stays where it is.
No, everything's constantly moving forward.
Yeah, no one lives in Mayberry anymore.
Well, I mean, just think about it. The world moves forward. I mean,
right.
Every time you get a paycheck, every time you get a raise, your life moves forward. And you make decisions that change the world.
So let's progress together.
Let's progress together.
Until next time.
Thanks for listening to the Pints and Perspectives podcast hosted by WellHouse Church. Be sure to give us a rating and review if you enjoyed the episode. It's free and it helps us immensely. Also, feel free to check out our other podcasts.